Well, Jake, Angeli, then, it's a pleasure to have you here again. And I bet you have a lot to say after all what happened last year and all what is going to happen this year. So, if you don't mind me starting with the first question, thank you. So, what do you think of the Trump's victory? Have you expected it? And how do you feel about it?
I knew that if we had any sort of a semblance of any bit of fair or honest election, Kamala Harris would lose and Trump would win. Anybody that was paying attention to the political ecosystem would come to that conclusion. The real question was the system corrupt enough to be hijacked again, right? And I think that what happened is that the majority of the country turned out in such numbers that they knew they couldn't seal it. And they also knew that it would be detrimental if they did.
Mhm. Uh-huh. So, it didn't really surprise you. Do I gather it well?
No, no. I mean, of course, I breathed a huge sigh of relief, of
Yeah.
course. And I think everybody in Russia and Ukraine did too, to be honest with you. The only people that didn't breathe a sigh of relief and began to panic were the war hawks and the war pigs. You know, I think everybody breathed a sigh of relief. But like I said, anybody paying attention to the political ecosystem saw Kamala Harris didn't have a chance. It was only the false narratives, the misinformation being pushed in America's mockingbird media that would have given you any thought to the contrary.
Yeah. No, seriously, I know that in some parts of Europe because they are recycling New York Times, CNN, they all thought that Harris is going to win. So they said very bad words about Trump. Now they can't take it back anymore.
Yeah, God loves poetic justice, and God does also have a very good sense of humor. So I think we're kind of seeing all that play out.
It's interesting what's happening. And on that note, actually, getting back to January 6th, the Department Justice Attorney Matthew Gross is expected to resign on January 16, as you probably know, right before Trump is getting inaugurated. How do you see this?
Um, Evidence that it was never about law and order.
Okay. And did you predicted that, or what do you think who will be his replacement? And
I don't know. I think that's kind of what's interesting about all this. One thing that I think is clear at this point is that everybody can agree, screw the Democrats, this agenda, this woke stuff, right? All this nonsense, the New World Order, the one world government, right? Everybody's kind of like, no, we're not going to do that. Um, Whether somebody is placed at the position, because this guy that's doing all these, prosecutions for January 6th and stuff, from what I understand, that's like his only job, or like that's like his main job. So if Trump's coming in, he's going to be useless. He's smart to resign. It's like quitting before you get fired, basically, right? Now, will we find that people like that gentleman or others in the DOJ unconstitutionally or malevolently went after certain people and thus committed crimes upon Trump's arrival into the White House? That remains to be seen.
well, Matt Gaetz didn't get the job, right? I don't know if you see it.
Well, I think it was a mistake offering it to him in the first place, personally.
Okay, what make you say that?
I got to experience Matt Gaetz' apathy firsthand. I got to experience his two-faced nature personally. And in my opinion, that is all the gauge that I need to look at him differently. If you betray me, I have to see you differently, right? Otherwise, I'm an idiot. So Matt Gaetz is out there advocating for my release. He's out there advocating for January Sixers being released or the plight of January Sixers, saying it's all wrong, it's unconstitutional, but he won't take a photo with me. He won't even talk to me at AmFest. In fact, he avoided me 3 times. Eye
Wow.
contact and everything. Knew it was me, avoided me. Had his Secret Service put up his hand, like, you need to stay right there. And I'm like, dude. And this is where, like, the level of hypocrisy and the audacity of this fool He goes out on the stage for AmFest a short time later, and he starts talking about the plight of January Sixers and how wrong it is that people are getting screwed by this government and all this. So it's like, okay, you know what? That's all I needed to see. That's all I need to know. Marjorie Taylor Greene had more balls than Matt Gaetz because she actually invited me backstage to talk to her for 15 minutes and she took a photo with me, which she posted on social media, which I didn't even care about the photo. What I want is the respect. It's like if you are out there advocating for January Sixers and the plight of these people that are being maligned by the system unfairly, and then you have one of them in front of you and you avoid them, then you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, I mean, if he surely recognized you, then it's a strange reaction, sort of opposite to what you're arguing about, right?
Well,
Well,
it's not alpha male behavior to run away like that. And that's why I say I wouldn't have put him at the head of the DOJ because you're going to need a real alpha male that doesn't back down as the head of the DOJ if you're going to go after the deep state.
that's a beta male.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And most of Congress, for that matter, are beta males, including the current Speaker of the House.
Okay. So you're against Johnson being the speaker again.
Well, I understand why they're saying we need to have him as Speaker for now.
Mhm.
Okay, because destabilizing the whole system while we're trying to get people, sworn in and while we're trying to get these people confirmed and stuff like that, it just doesn't make sense. Let's just get this process done. Let's get the new government in place, and then we can talk about removing the beta from the speaker position.
Interesting. I guess that's what Trump said too, right? He said
Yes,
we want to get
yes.
at
That
this.
doesn't mean, but that doesn't mean that, he's, I think, all in on McCarthy long term. What we need is somebody like the person that Matt Gaetz pretends to be.
Mhm.
That's what we need. In all honesty, what the American people really need is me as the Speaker of the House,
Is that
because I would actually represent the speakership well. I would represent the people well. Okay. I mean, did we talk about the last time when I ran for office? Did we talk about my campaign platform?
I remember you wanted to run for Congress, right? I
That's
actually
right.
my questions how it's going and
Oh, it didn't go, but that's because I was a third party candidate here in Arizona, where they have made it extremely difficult to be a third party candidate here in Arizona and actually win, or even get on the ballot for that matter.
so what's the plan now?
Well, the platform, was, and this is another reason why I think Matt Gaetz is scum.
Mhm.
The platform that I had was proposing a single bill voting law the first day. Secondly, was an amendment for term limits for congressmen and their staff. Third was a criminalization of the current lobbying that is being done in DC. And fourth would be the seven-figure fines, $1 million fines, expulsion from Congress, and prosecution for all Congress members and staff caught in insider trading. And I think that should go for families too. So that was my campaign platform. And then when I gave my campaign platform and spoke about it on the 13th of November, 2023 on Newsmax, a national, interview, on the 29th of November, Representative Khanna, a Democrat, and Matt Gaetz were on the House floor talking about this anti-corruption plan that they are proposing. And it just so happens to be three out of the four things that I was campaigning on and called them out like on a national stage that they should be doing. Like as the guy in horns and face paint calling them out and saying, I can do my job better than you. I think they, got their, feet close to the fire, but they haven't done anything with that anti-corruption plan. But they've sent $1 billion to Ukraine or to to Al Qaeda and the Taliban or to Israel. Like it's like, but they can't vote on this corruption plan. So it's things like that where I look at the situation and I say, okay, well, clearly with Johnson, we have more of the same. And if I were in office, you better believe I'd be more than happy to be disruptive and get things done. Because that's the thing. The reason why things are so bad is because nothing ever gets done. And the only thing that ever gets done is the maintenance of the status quo.
Mhm, mhm. So are you trying to get into the like administration at this point, or do you think you could get some kind of a role in that?
No, I do not. No, I do not. The horns and the face paint, I think, pretty much ended my whatever political career I might have. But that's fine. I really don't care. Politics is, mud wrestling with alligators in a swamp. Why would I want to do that? You remember that guy that I forgot what his name was. He was in the wheelchair in Congress, and he came out and talked about how he was invited to like an orgy, and all these Congress members are like doing cocaine and stuff, like with hookers and stuff. Like, and then they got rid of him real fast, didn't they? They kicked his ass out of Congress like that, right? Why would they not do the same thing to me if I'm coming in there and like proposing single bill voting laws, calling everybody out for their corruption on the right and on the left? I don't have any political real allies. They want to steal my ideas. They don't want me in Congress, Or at least they want to pretend to have good ideas for a short time.
So you don't think you will run again?
Probably not. I would have to be like specifically asked. Like, and I would have to have the money. Somebody else would have to do all the work. That's really what it comes down to. I have no interest in politics. I have no interest in campaigning. I have no interest in any of that garbage. Politics is downstream from culture, and we have a toxic culture. So my goal is to fix the culture first.
So what means other than going to be a politician do you think can help the society?
Well, the greatest people who've helped society the most have not been politicians. Actually, those are the people that end up screwing society over in my reading of history. So, great leaders often are not holders of political office. In many cases, holders of political office are far more constrained than, say, just a public figure like myself, just a person who has their own independent ideas and can speak to them. As a congressman or a president or whatever, you actually end up limiting your ability to say things and do things that, whereas, somebody like myself, I can say and do whatever I want, within certain limits, definitely don't go into the Capitol during a riot. But, other than that, I think I'll be okay. I'm not going to do that again.
So you're not going, are you going to the inauguration?
I can't leave the state of Arizona without, probation officer approval. So no.
Mm. Well, on that note, do you think Trump will pardon the January 6 people? It's over 1,500 of them.
Maybe. I hope so. He said he would. I believe he's a man of his word. He said day one. You know, um, Pardoning everybody may not necessarily be the best idea, though. I don't think he's going to make that kind of a legal mistake.
Mm.
Um, what you want to do is you want to sort the wheat from the chaff. You want to sort the good from the bad. You don't just want to paint everybody with the same brush, right? And also keep in mind there's federal agents and provocateurs and stuff like that. Uh, we want to do an investigation is what we want. We want to stop all prosecutions, perform a real investigation, and then start to either issue pardons or, start issuing paperwork for court and prosecutions. Because I do believe there was malevolent intent when it comes to some of these actors in the government or in these agencies. Also, let us not forget Sergei Dabinin was in the crowd on January 6th, a Ukrainian spy. There wasn't any Russians, as far as I was told. You know what I mean? So, what does that mean about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine and what's going on now, and how as soon as Biden got in office, lo and behold, the Ukrainian war popped off and cured COVID? You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's something else going on here with January 6th that I think actually indicates there was a lot of fingers in the pie. It might have international implications.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you think the January 20th inauguration is going to be safe?
Yeah. You don't look, the stuff that these people have at their disposal, that's what's kind of crazy about this, okay? Is that the same system that can be used to protect can also be used to do harm, all depending on whose hands the system is in, who's got their fingers on the buttons and the levers of power. Okay. So currently, what we're dealing with is, I think, in many ways, a rogue organization, a rogue group that do not serve the American interest or the interests of people of Ukraine or Russia or anybody but themselves. And this is why it's so important that the people of Russia, and in particular, and I think people like Putin know this, that these motherfuckers don't represent the American people at all. They are not, they don't represent us. Are you kidding? We don't want any of this, and for that I got to give it to the Russian government, to Putin, in that he really has tempered his capabilities, because the man could go totally nuts, and he doesn't. He's smart enough not to. He's smart enough to see Trump's about to get in, and that any and all attempts to provoke him into doing something stupid are ill-advised to engage with.
So it seems like you agree that Trump will go towards the peace initiative, right? Towards the peace settlement. Do you think he can manage to do it within 24 hours, as he says?
Yeah, absolutely. Peace. The only reason why there hasn't been peace is because of the Biden-Harris administration. That's the only reason. Initially there was this peace talks, and then the Biden-Harris administration came in and said to Zelensky, they pulled on his puppet strings and said, "You're going to say no."
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you believe he can pull it through that quickly. What will happen to Zelensky, though? I know you read a lot. You seem to have a lot of insights into that.
I don't know, dude. Maybe he'll, lose himself in a pile of cocaine. I don't know. I definitely don't trust him. He's an actor and a comedian, and he's a joke in that regard as far as a leader is concerned.
Yeah, it's unusual, right? That a leader is former, not only actor, as you said, but a comedian. It's a level different. You sometimes
Well,
can.
and then he clearly is always coked up. Like, I mean, he's always got a runny nose. Come on, dude. You know? I'm sorry. That's the way I see it.
Uh, uh, Angela, I'm just really curious. What do you think of the rest of the members Trump picked as his administration nominees? Anyone like standing out?
I agree with a lot of them. I really like RFK Jr.
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
what he's talking about doing at HHS. Those are things I have been praying for a very, very long time. And he is the perfect guy for that job. I'm really happy about Thomas Massey having a lot to do with the Department of Agriculture and talking about regenerative farming. That is also imperative for American prosperity and global prosperity for that matter. We need to set a precedent here in the United States on a recipe for success and symbiosis, not just with each other, but other nations and with the ecosystem. So, in that regard, we're really moving in the right direction. Now, there is also other things, though. Look, Marco Rubio is connected to certain people, neocon, warhawks, war pigs. Okay. And what we don't want to do is trade one deep state for another. What we don't want to do is um, trade a Democrat run deep state for a Republican run one, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to set up an infrastructure for deporting millions of illegal violent felons and immigrants, illegal immigrants, while at the same time maintaining that infrastructure so that somebody like the Biden-Harris administration can come in and just start yanking people out of their homes and putting them in internment camps if they don't obey a lockdown or if they spread quote unquote misinformation on Facebook, like what they're doing in London or England. Okay. So it's going to be a difficult thing to know initially. The future is always in motion. You can see possibilities, all depending on how far you can see, and I do see some, but there is no determined end just yet. That as far as I can see, like how things are going to go, as far as like how things are going to go long term,
Mhm.
even after the Trump administration. It's funny as it is, Trump's administration actually is kind of like the hinge in history. We can go toward ascension and positivity, or we can go toward extinction and negativity. And whichever way we go is kind of in many ways dependent upon the choices that this administration makes.
Mhm. Yeah, Elon Musk was saying like if we don't elect Donald Trump, it's going to be extinction possibly, right, of the United States under Kamala
Well,
Harris.
and all depending on who we have in charge after Trump, it could very well be delaying the inevitable, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Mhm. So would be JD Vance like the automatic pick most probably for the Republicans?
I think that's the hope. Now, if we look into who's behind JD Vance, Peter Thiel, Palantir, right, In-Q-Tel in many cases, right, like Silicon Valley, CIA spooks. I'm not trying to be a dick, like, and in all honesty, like to a certain extent, we kind of need those spooks to a certain extent. What's happened is that we've given them carte blanche to do whatever, and
Mhm.
then they've taken it and run with it. There is no check against the spooks. Okay. So we have to be like, look, hey, you're going to have to do a naked lap. You're going to have to say all the stuff that you've been doing. We're going to have to get uh, what's the word? Some, we're going to have to gain the trust of not just the American people, but the world. We're going to have to gain some integrity back, which means that you guys and what you've been doing with all your crazy stuff that you knew was wrong. Well, guess what? Now the world knows.
Mhm.
And public humiliation has not gone out of style. Public humiliation, in my opinion, is probably one of the best forms of punishment
Mhm.
because what it does is it's like soul shaming. Basically, it's like, look, you know what you did was wrong and you did it anyway. Now everybody knows. How do you feel about yourself? You know what I'm saying?
It's worse than a physical punishment, maybe even, right? Depends on the
Well,
physical.
I think well, it's the perfect punishment because it's the most likely to generate real change.
True. Physical one, not really, right?
Well,
It's
do
one
you
thing.
fight to change things or do you fight to punish? I found that we're all such sinners, we should leave punishment to God. And if we're really going to change things, then there's better ways of doing it than violence.
Definitely. No, no violence. No to violence. What do you think of Elon Musk now being big part of the administration?
I think that he's autistic enough to not allow it to cloud his judgment. I think, and I mean that with love for him. I'm kind of autistic myself. And that's why, to a certain extent, I understand where he's coming from on some things. I love the fact that he told the entirety of the nation to take a step back and literally fuck their own face. Like, in all honesty, that to me is so awesome. It's so funny because what it is that he's taking a hard line and he has no problem whatsoever because he has FU money. He has no problem saying what he thinks. And that's what we're missing in American politics, where we have these manufactured identities based on talking points that are being spouted by CIA mockingbird outlets. This isn't going to help us. We're not going to get anywhere with this, right? And the worse America does, clearly the worse places like Russia do. Because if we have a shite leadership in America, that affects Russia. That affects Ukraine. It affects Israel. It affects Europe. It affects Africa. It affects China. It affects Australia, South America, Venezuela. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, hold on a second. Are you familiar with the term trophic cascade?
Like a domino effect, some kind of.
Yes, yes, that's correct. But it's in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's what happens when you either replace or take away an apex predator out of the top of the food chain. Okay. And if you want to look at like the best possible example of a trophic cascade, you can look at what happened in Yellowstone National Park when the wolves were removed from the park because they were going after local cattle ranches and cattle. Okay. So the whole ecosystem literally collapsed. All right, we're talking about the rivers, changed, the foliage didn't grow properly. All of the life ended up being going like leaving the park. Okay, all because the wolves are gone. And once the wolves were introduced, everything changed within a month or two. Okay, the whole ecosystem literally changed. So when we have the apex predator at the top of the food chain, right? In other words, when good people are in charge of powerful tools or quote unquote weapons, right? Then we have an orderly world. Then we have some level of abundance for all. We end up creating the room necessary for growth for everybody, whether it be Russians or Ukrainians, whether it be Israelis or Middle Eastern or Palestinians, or be Europeans or Americans.
Mhm. No, totally agree with that. There is some kind of nature still even in the modern world, right? Sort of Darwinism and all that. We need order. I also was curious, have you gotten your spear back? You
Well,
know, the
it was a staff, and I have procured my property. It is at an undisclosed location. I don't want to, I don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. So I'm keeping it out of mine, if you know what I mean.
Yes. And if I may, just curious, last question. You of course saw the attacks in New Orleans. You probably saw the attack in, well, they say it was not an attack, it was like suicide in Las Vegas. How do you evaluate these two occasions, several hours apart, few
Well,
seconds?
wasn't there that whole thing in New York though, too, right after that?
They were
Wasn't there
shooting.
like a mass shooting or something too?
It sounded more like a drunk mass shooting somewhere in a bar, but to be honest, I didn't dig into it.
Okay, okay. So, well, when they change the definition of mass shooting, then they have a reason to expand their budget. So it's entirely possible that they were not related, but it's also entirely possible that they were. And there was supposedly some sort of a small plane crash that happened yesterday after all that crazy stuff that happened the day before. Um, Look, are you familiar with Operation Gladio? Did we talk about that?
Which operation? Sorry,
Gladio, Operation Gladio.
I don't remember that.
No? Okay. Long story short, after the Nazis left Europe in at the end of World War II, they left behind a number of like sleeper cell agents, underground groups that were loyal to the Nazis. Okay. And when that fact was divulged to American intel agencies and military by the Operation Paperclip Nazis, they chose to, instead of rounding up and trying or executing or imprisoning these individuals, these Nazis left behind, they would use their assets within the Operation Paperclip intel officers to then activate these subgroups who had buried ammunition and explosives and all sorts of stuff across the European mainland, and basically were there to act as sleeper cells if and when the Nazis decided that they wanted to destabilize Europe and take it back over. So what happened is that they activated these cells, these entities throughout Europe, like dominoes. They began to fall one after another, and things like North American Trade Organization or the European Union were formed as a result. In many ways, if you look at the origins of NATO, what you find is their Nazi roots. You find that many Nazi officers were acting as advisors or council members and stuff in the from the inception of NATO in the beginning. Okay. And if we look at the kind of strategies that are being employed militarily in Europe at the time, and we look at all the things, the events that happened in Europe after World War II through this Gladio lens, then things begin to make a lot more sense, especially when we get into things like, the formation of agreements with the Soviet Union after its fall, and the agreement that certain land would not become NATO land, and why. Because I honestly do think that the Russians, the Soviets knew that we procured Nazis. They did too. What's interesting is how it is that the Nazis actually kind of played the Soviets versus the Russians and ended up prospering themselves, and this essentially almost created a Fourth Reich, a globalist, communist, fascist slave state. I mean, don't forget, Klaus Schwab is related to Nazis. Okay, they've talked about infiltrating the cabinets all over the world. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, let's have a real talk here. Um, anyway, I hope all of this is making sense. The situation that we're dealing with when it comes to the global situation is one that I think Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and maybe even Xi Jinping, probably not though, are hoping to create some level of stability and prosperity.
So you don't think these two attacks were, or one attack was coincidence and lone wolf?
I think it's far more likely that the deep state's getting desperate
Hmm.
and trying to push fear than it would be Islamic terrorism. I think it's entirely possible that it could be both, especially considering that Al Qaeda and ISIS have CIA roots. Huh. Right? So if we're going to talk about Islamic terrorism, we have to talk about CIA, and if there's domestic things that are taking place in this country, are you telling me the CIA doesn't know that they're not involved?
Well, Angela, it was really enlightening. Thank you so much. Can I know when you can leave Arizona?
Well, hopefully, if Trump does issue pardons or at least some level of like, suspension of sentence or something, then hopefully when Trump takes office, that would be cool.
Are you in contact with his administration at all?
No, like I told you, they're not going to touch me with a 10-foot pole. At least, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. I think it would behoove them to, show people that I'm not what the media said I was. It would be good for them. But like I said, I think I, I'll do just fine where I'm at as long as God wants me to be here. I'll be here doing what it is that I'm doing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was very enlightening. I appreciate that you made yourself available. I really do. It's always interesting talking to you. So we really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And after listening to and I listened to it after he did it, like right that day, Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin. You know, I try to I try to get inside everybody's head and see why people do what they do. And I looked at least a little bit into the fall of the Soviet Union and the role of the KGB and who Putin is and when he became president. I've listened to the arguments in the West of their vilification of the man. And I'm not naive enough to think for one second that Russia is not going to attempt to expand its sphere of influence or gain more natural resources. Okay. But given some of the things that Putin has done and some of the things that he said, it's clear that he does not want global war, you know, and I don't think he's as bad as everybody says. I think he's smart. I think he's really smart. But that also makes him ruthless. That also makes him cunning. And that's not a bad thing. If you're going to look out for your people, I mean, let us not forget what happened to the Russians after World War II. You think we had it bad in Europe and the United States? Russia had it the worst. The things that were done, and then they had to deal with fucking communism after that. So we're really talking about a people that are dressing their wounds still, that are still healing and still dealing with the scars of communism in World War II. So we can't just set all that aside and see like, oh, well, of course they're not going to try and get back up. Do we need a global Russian controlled world? No. But we certainly also don't need a globalist controlled world either. And I think that America and Russia can both agree on that, at least with the Trump administration. I hope to see them working together toward mutual prosperity and the end of globalism.
Would you travel to Russia?
I don't like the idea of getting on a plane and going across the ocean. I don't even like the idea of getting on a ship and going across. The only way I would even think about doing something like that is maybe if I like went from Alaska right over there, like a little. Because dude, I've done a 14-hour flight from America to Japan. It's not fun. And I've seen some of the weird stuff going on with these Boeing airplanes and some of these people that are, high profile and could topple the whole house of cards. And they just, lo and behold, their plane goes missing, like, MH370, or lo and behold, they go down. I would love to see, honestly, what I'd really like to see in Russia is I'd love to visit with the Siberians. I'd love to do it during summer, though. I don't want to go during winter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a desert guy. I can't do that. But I would love to be like, I'd love to go to Siberia. I'd love to see the culture because that, you got me like, I look at things differently. I look at things over the course of tremendous amounts of time. So when I think about the people, the native people that survived in fucking Siberia and like passed on like the culture to the next, like the amount, like the hardness that you got to be to survive that, not just survive but thrive. Like, I want to shake those people. I want to hear what they got to say. Shaman is actually a Siberian or Mongolian term. So like, I would love to have that kind of an experience. I also like to see Moscow. The what's it called, the architecture is beautiful. You
It's
know, I think that oh, go ahead.
no, just say it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and well, and it's also in tune with the ecosystem, the curves and you know what I'm saying? Like it's beautiful. I'd also like, I think, is Prague in Russia?
No, Prague is 2 hours by plane from Moscow.
Oh, okay, but it's close. It's in that area, right? It was once Russia, right? It was once Soviet Union, right?
It's
Prague,
Slavic culture. It's the same culture, very similar.
same culture. Okay, right, right, right. Well, because there's a lot of magical traditions that originate from Prague. And it's to me that's interesting stuff, and I would love to see it. I'd love that see that whole area. I really think that if we're going to create a better world for our children, then we're going to have to learn to get along. We're going to have to learn to embrace our differences. We're going to have to learn to enjoy things about other cultures that may seem foreign to us, or at least understand their history. It would behoove the people of America to know and understand Russian history or Chinese history and how it goes all the way back into ancient times and how these cultures operate, because then that would give them some sort of an understanding or a reflection of the modern people that are in these areas and why it is, for example, like in China, they would allow something like communism and the CCP to rule their lives. They're used to emperors.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Well, it was really interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm taking up so much of your time. It was nice chatting with you.
No, it just the Zoom has some kind of time limit, and I don't want to be cut off in out of nowhere. And you're like, did she just turn me off or something? No, there's like 40 minutes, and now it's 2:40. I'm worried it would be cut off without any politeness of
It's
saying,
all good.
uh, thank you. And it's
All good.
well, anyway, thank you. I will send you everything we got as usual, and let me know if, anything pops up or if we could engage in anything together.
It'd be my pleasure. And if I'm ever in New York, after Trump's inauguration, I will give you a jingle, okay?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Angeli. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Good day.